to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Content creator here on YouTube, Ellie Seckbeck, posted a tweet in reference to Showtime's potential departure from the sport of boxing, saying, "Only in boxing would people celebrate a downfall, which has not been confirmed, of a network despite the fact that the end result will hurt fighters, trainers, managers, media, fans, and the sport."
I think Ellie is confusing people saying, "I told you so."
I think he's confusing an "I told you so" with jubilation, with celebration. I'm not rooting for anybody to lose their job. I would much rather they simply change their practices, but their inability to do so the last 5 or 6 years may be why Showtime, after 37 years in the sport.
Maybe that's why they're leaving.
And maybe you're a part of the problem. Two-division, two-time lineal, two-time Ring Magazine champion Teofimo Lopez responded to Ellie's tweet by saying, "We're all coming to an end if everyone doesn't let go of the O theory and start fighting each other. These are the problems of the trainers, managers, media, and promoters. Everyone thinks they're the fighter or believe they know best. Well, their best is about to lose a lot."
He's right.
No, I don't often agree with things that Teofimo says and some things that he does, but in this instance, I do agree. And I think all those aforementioned parties, the promoters, the managers, the media, and some of the fans, they're part of the problem, not the solution.
They're culpable.
Veteran boxing scribe Dan Raphael, he doesn't seem to think so. He responded by saying, "It's not the media's problem at all," to which Teofimo responded, "Media has fault as well. When the truth is not told to the public on who did what and such, all because anyone who speaks on truth gets canceled or gets threatened by promoters by not granting media credentials for major fights to those with morals, the whole thing is a hot mess."
He's right.
We could go on for days about all the culpable parties and how they're culpable. Why? Like promoters protecting their fighters and keeping them out of big fights, perhaps due to their relationships with certain platforms, or perhaps it's because they just don't have faith in them.
Fights that take too long to make.
You had two fighters, two unbeaten champions in Caleb Plant and David Benavidez on the same side of the street, under the same promotional banner, on the same platform, and how many years did it take to finally get them in the ring?
So many that by the time they did fight, neither one of them were champions.
And all those years it took to make the fight, finally make the fight, they didn't pay off because it didn't bring in big numbers at the box office. It didn't bring in big numbers at the gate. For that, you might as well have done it 4 or 5 years ago when they still had belts.
You're wondering why the Showtime platform may end up leaving the sport of boxing.
Where to begin? Because there are a myriad of reasons, myriad of bad decisions that led them to where they are now.
Take too long to make the fights that need to be made. Protecting fighters, outright protecting fighters.
Gervonta Davis has had a WBA regular title, not a super title, not a full title, a regular title since 2019. A title that at any point between now and then, he could have used to fight Vasyl Lomachenko when he had the belts, or Teofimo Lopez when he had the belts, or George.
Or Devin.
And instead of using that title for its function, use it for what it's good for, he simply defended it against a bunch of scrubs. The media themselves, they didn't do enough to call him out on it. They don't want to tell the truth, that he's a protected fighter.
You guys don't think telling the truth is a part of your job description?
Dan Raphael doesn't. In so many words, he said, "It's not the media's problem."
Oh?
If you make a living writing about boxing, and boxing as a sport is on the decline, it is your problem. It's everybody in boxing's problem, and you have your role to play.
Now, if what you're saying is you don't make a living writing about boxing, that would explain why you're so blasé about it.
Those who cover the sport, especially these days, they don't want to tell the truth. They don't want to tell the truth about certain fighters, tell the truth about what's going on.
Think about Ellie Seckbeck, who I mentioned earlier.
This guy.
Big Gervonta Davis fan, big pom-pom waver, thinks he's the greatest thing since sliced bread for beating who?
If you ask him, I'm sure if you ask him, he would tell you that Gervonta Davis is the face of boxing.
Or one of them.
Those chicken shit numbers they love to talk up, his relative success in today's day and age, whatever his numbers have been, they haven't been enough to keep Showtime Boxing afloat because now they may be leaving.
That's important.
The Showtime platform has done about 5 or 6 pay-per-views where Gervonta Davis is the headliner. And I told you, time and time again, I told you, those numbers aren't sustainable.
No.
They're nothing to write home about, nothing to brag about, but that's not what the sycophants were saying.
Oh, they were saying he's a star. He's the next big thing.
All the while enabling the soft matchmaking we've seen in his career, at the same time enabling the Showtime platform and the PBC to gouge the boxing fans, gouge them with overpriced fights that nobody's asking for.
Not just his fights.
Although he is one glaring example that if he is as big a star as you've been saying he is, and business is as good as you guys have been making it out to be, then why is Showtime now leaving?
Why?
If the numbers were as great as you guys made them out to be, I think
they'd be asking for an extension.
I think Paramount and Showtime would want to stay in the boxing business, not leave it after 37 years, but that's the story. They're leaving.
Why?
Well, it can't be because of how great the numbers are. It can't be because of how great the numbers have been.
The media is culpable. The media is responsible to a degree because they don't want to tell the truth.
No, you don't want to call these guys out on it. You want to maintain your professional relationships for access, and the sport suffers for it.
Instead of being honest.
A lot of the fights that Showtime has put on pay-per-view and some of the ones that Fox put on pay-per-view before they left the sport, those fights didn't belong on pay-per-view, and you should have chastised the PBC more.
Should have put pressure on those guys.
Should have put more pressure on Gervonta to fight his contemporaries, of which there were several. Tevin Farmer,
Vasyl Lomachenko, Teofimo Lopez, George Kambosos, Devin Haney.
Instead, you'd rather pretend that anybody really wanted to see him fight Isaac Cruz and Rolly fucking Romero.
You'd rather pretend?
You'd rather pretend those were good numbers. You'd rather pretend.
Ryan Garcia fight did good numbers, but that's because he had Ryan Garcia to help him.
What seems like it was too little and too late for Showtime Boxing, this effort that we've been seeing this calendar year, but what about all the other ones before it?
It was the biggest fight Showtime Boxing put on last year.
Promoters and the managers are responsible for not making the fights that need to be made in a timely fashion, because this is entertainment after all. It's not essential to our existence. You don't do what we want you to do, we're gonna stop paying attention. We're gonna stop buying.
Promoters and the managers at the PBC.
And the sycophants in the media, what are supposed to be journalists that enable their practices, that have only hurt the sport.
Teofimo is right.
So when I think about Showtime potentially leaving the sport of boxing, I think of what decisions were made on that side of the street, the leadership.
None of this happened by accident.
Causality. Put simply, it's causality. Cause and effect. The decisions you've made led you here.
That's the condensed version, because I could go on about this for hours.
Too many people in the media were willing to exaggerate and outright embellish the PBC's success on the Showtime platform, but the truth inexorably always comes out. The chickens, as they say, seem to be coming home to roost.
What does that mean?
It means they fucked up. It means that if you guys would have told the truth, perhaps they would have felt so inclined to make the fights that people want to see, that if you guys weren't lying about how well they're doing.
Can't be doing that well if Showtime is leaving boxing.
It means that some of yous, at least some of yous, have been a part of the problem. So here we are.
Teofimo is right.
The other bit of Teofimo's candidate caught my attention, the protecting the O theory. So many unbeaten fighters playing it safe and fighting in fights that no one cares about, all the while not building their profile, not growing their audience or the audience that consumes boxing. I mean, consider that Demetrius Andrade is an unbeaten fighter, Jermall Charlo is an unbeaten fighter, as is Frank Martin.
But these ain't superstars.
Having an unbeaten record isn't everything. And I think the reason so many fighters and so many fans have this apprehension is as a byproduct of the previous era of boxing, the Mayweather era. So much was made about Floyd maintaining his O to get to 49-0.
I mean, I get it that, you don't want to suffer a loss. It is a setback and you will have to rebuild, but it's not the end of the world if you do. And you shouldn't spend so much time protecting your unbeaten record that you
play it too careful in protecting your unbeaten record. You end up not fighting in fights that people want to see, and your career suffers for it.
It does.
Congratulations to Floyd for going his whole career without losing a fight. Hey, that's great. That's fabulous. But everybody's not Floyd, and everybody's not gonna be.
Thus, that can't be the model for everybody.
The top 2 earners in the sport today, The only two fighters on the Forbes list, alongside guys like LeBron James and Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, these top earners in their respective sports. The only two boxers just so happen to be two guys that have lost fights before, more than once. Canelo Alvarez, he's at the top, and Anthony Joshua's behind him.
Canelo's lost 2 fights, and he's got a draw. He ain't got a perfect record.
Anthony Joshua's got 3 losses, and yet he's still one of the top earners in his sport. So what does that tell you about having an unblemished record? What does that tell you about being an unbeaten fighter? It tells you that you can be unbeaten, but unless you're fighting in fights that people want to see, it doesn't matter if you're unbeaten.
You gotta take risks.
Because that's what people are paying for. You're trying to appeal to the paying public to ways you can get rich off of them watching you fight. But they're not going to watch you fight.
It's not just anybody.
Oh, I know. You look at two guys like Ryan and Javante, two guys who you can accuse of playing it safe and all the money that they made from their fight together, but that's an isolated incident. How many other guys can duplicate that formula? How many actually are?
Exactly.
More realistic example that is more applicable to that many more fighters is veteran journeyman Derek Chisora, who in spite of having losses in the double digits all these years has maintained enough marquee value.
He's a 7-figure fighter. You heard what I said. He's a 7-figure fighter, but why?
Why?
Because he endeared himself to the fans with his performances. That's why. Because win, lose, or draw, win, lose, or fall, he puts on a show, and you can see this is a guy that's really trying, as opposed to what Jermell Charlo did with Canelo, just show up for a check and rode his bike most of the fight.
People pay to see drama. They pay to see a show. You gotta put one on.
You do that enough times and endear yourself to the paying public, when you fight, they'll show up. That's the way it works. It's not about an unbeaten record or just about an unbeaten record. You've got to fight in fights that people want to see, and you have to perform.
Teofimo is right. People have got to let go of the O theory.
I feel like a lot of fighters that were protecting their unbeaten records, and some that still are, their careers have stagnated for it. Because you may be unbeaten, but who wants to see you anyway? You don't fight nobody good, nobody interesting.
It's a delicate balance, but you do have to fight in good fights. That's a big part of it.
So many aspiring to be like Floyd, and so many that won't be, need to remember that while Manny Pacquiao wasn't an undefeated fighter, he made a lot of money in the sport too, as did Miguel Cotto.
There's gonna be ups and there's gonna be downs.
Getting to the big money and staying undefeated at the same time is easier said than done, which is why Floyd can't be the example.
He's the exception.
Most guys are not leaving this sport undefeated, and whether you like Floyd or not, most guys ain't got Floyd's skills. So you need to be realistic and honest with yourself.
Protect that O for too long, you ain't gonna make no money.
Fighters gotta fight. That's what people pay to see, and that's what you want, right? You want people to pay to see you. Teofimo Lopez hit the nail on the head. People have got to let go of the O theory.
The O by itself, it's not everything. The top 2 earning guys in the sport today ain't got their O. That's not stopping them from making all that fucking money.
So what does that tell you? Finally, per a tweet from Michael Benson, Shakur Stevenson was asked if he will undoubtedly stick with Top Rank and not even consider a new promoter when his contract expires next year. Hell fucking no. I'm considering every option possible. Let me make sure that's known. Top Rank's good to me. I haven't got nothing bad to say about Top Rank, but once my contract is up, I will be a free agent, and I'm willing to talk to anybody and everybody that wants to do great business. He just started his lightweight campaign. He just made his lightweight debut at 135 pounds, so if his contract were to expire next year, you have to wonder, what do the other outfits have to offer him? Matchroom doesn't have a lot going on at 135. Golden Boy, they've got William Zepeda and who else?
Who?
Floyd Schofield? Those aren't big money fights.
BBC's got Isaac Cruz and Frank Martin.
Those would be decent fights for Shakur, but him going over there doesn't guarantee that those fights happen. Just because two guys are on the same side of the street doesn't mean it's a lock. The fight takes place. Gary Russell was on the same side of the street as Leo Santa Cruz.
And they never fought.
Keith Thurman was on the same side of the street as Errol Spence Jr.
And they never fought.
Currently, Frankie Sanchez is over there and he can't get a meaningful fight to save his life, even though Andy's supposed to be over there, ain't he? The point is, just because Shakur goes over there doesn't mean he gets those guys, though what might leave him feeling so inclined to go over there is a Gervonta Davis fight. Now, you tell me, when has Gervonta ever expressed an interest in fighting Shakur?
They say he's the biggest name at or around these weights. Some people say that he's the new face of boxing. Well, if he's the face of boxing, isn't it on him to make an offer to Shakur? Isn't it on him to make the fight happen?
And has he? Has he even tried to make the fight happen? Is he going to? Now, you think about what Top Rank might have to offer him at that same weight. We're just getting started.
This guy's been getting 7 figures a fight. 7 figures for Robson Conceição. 7 figures for guys like Yoshino.
Edwin De Los Santos. He's set to make 7 figures for the likes of Edwin De Los Santos. You will find that kind of an investment is hard to duplicate. Next year, it's rumored that Vasyl Lomachenko may be taking on George Kambosos. And if Shakur sticks around, he may get the winner of that fight. And if nothing else, look at who manages him.
Who?
Jay Prince, who's been doing business for years with Top Rank. That's where he funnels all of his fighters.
And he knows what he's doing.
Oh, they know how to groom fighters. I think that goes without saying. They're the best place to groom and develop a blue-chip prospect, a young fighter, but they might also be the best deal in town.
You've been making 7 figures a fight. You've been making multi-millions.
They say a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. You see what kind of investment and what kind of money you've been making at Top Rank. Don't get it in your head that you're going to find that money anywhere and everywhere.
You won't.
Just telling you, if nothing else, I'm confident that Shakur may not change his decorum based on who manages him. Jay Prince and his long-standing relationship with Bob Arum and the people at Top Rank.
He may want to fight PBC fighters.
He might, but the PBC are on shaky ground, unsteady ground. Their only remaining broadcast partner is rumored to be leaving the sport of boxing. So to get paid the way you'd want to get paid, where would the money come from? Oh, they might have 1 or 2 names.
Couple fights.
You sure you want to go over there at this point in the juncture when they're going through what they're going through?
We don't know where they might wind up.
Now, maybe what he's doing is taking a page out of Devin Haney's book. That after Devin's contract with Matchroom was up, he stayed a network and promotional free agent to see what else was out there for him on some other side of the street. He got to make very good money doing that. Now he's back over at Matchroom after his tenure at Top Rank.
But that's because Top Rank had 1 or 2 lightweights that he wanted. Now that he's at 140, Matchroom has a 140-pounder that he wants. It all depends on where you're going to be.
So if you're going to be at 135 pounds, you know that it might behoove you to stay put?
Don't go stepping in dog shit thinking the grass is greener on the other side.
Yeah, he might want to keep his options open whilst seeing what else is out there, though what he might find is that there's not much.
Comprendo, friendo.